Well, hello. Today I would like to show you how to install our Honeypot software on one of these Raspberry Pis. Now, if you're not using a Raspberry Pi, the software works fine, for example, in an Ubuntu virtual machine. You can just skip to the video past the Raspberry Pi part, and then everything is pretty much the same for the Ubuntu virtual machine. Now, in addition to the Raspberry Pi, you will also need one of these micro SD cards for the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi, pretty much any current version works. I tested here with the Raspberry Pi 3, also tested it with a 4. Make sure you have a wired network connector. Wireless kind of works, but it's a bit more complex to set up and not quite as reliable as a simple wired connector. Now, why would you do that? Why would you install a Honeypot? You see all this great data we have to offer, and I have the ISCTV website here as a background, isctv.sans.edu. All the data we collect is offered for free. You can use things like, for example, this website in your SOC sort of as eye candy, or you can actually use it in your day-to-day work to, for example, figure out what others are seeing about particular IP addresses. So all the data is free. We don't charge anything for you to use the data. We just hope, and we don't require it actually, that you will contribute back to the community by running one of our honeypots. And if you can't do so at work, I totally understand that. You know, enterprise networks are complex. They don't let you necessarily connect a honeypot to it. Home network data is as useful, so just setting this up on your home network will be a great project for the whole family to enjoy. So you can have a honeypot night and check with the kids and so what's going on, who's it hacking you. So really lots of fun to be had with that. But to get started, we need to download the basic Raspbian operating system. To do so, we go to the RaspberryPi.org website. And then you see the download link. We will need Raspbian, that's the distribution we are using. Now, you can run the desktop software. However, for the Honeypot itself, you don't need to, and it's faster, simpler to run the light software. You don't need to connect a monitor or even a keyboard to your Raspberry Pi to run it as a Honeypot, and the Raspbian Buster Lite software works just great for that. So let's download this. It's only 400 megabyte. The full desktop version is 2.5 gigabytes, so about 5 times as large. So that's why running light makes things a lot simpler. Now it takes about a minute here for me to download this, so let me skip forward to when I have it downloaded. Now, the next few steps I'll demonstrate here on my Mac. If you're running a Linux or a Windows machine, you can just follow the installation guide here on the Raspbian website and skip my little demonstration here. So I opened a terminal here on my Mac and I'm in the downloads directory. Let's first make sure that we got the right thing downloaded here. So here is our file. 400 megabytes sounds about right, but then we also want to make sure that it didn't get corrupt. So we calculate the SHA-256 checksum for the file. That's the one that Raspbian offers on its website. So let's just switch back to the website. Here at the bottom, you have the hash. So let's just, to make it easy to compare, copy it over to the terminal. And yep, looks like we got the right thing. So next, we want to unzip the file. Again, this can take a couple seconds here to complete. And next we need to copy this image file that we just unzipped to our SD card. And now the one tricky thing here is we need to figure out what the SD card is called. Now, right now I have not plugged in the SD card. So what am I going to do is I'm going to get a list of all the disks connected to this Mac before I insert the SD card. And here you see the last disk I currently have connected is disk number 7. So let me now connect the SD card here. Okay, it's always best to wait a couple seconds after you do so, and then just run disutil list again. And you see we now have a new card, disk 8. It may not be the last one. It sometimes happens, let's say, there was no disk 5 before, that it inserts it further up in the list. So always also make sure that the size is correct. Everything on this card will be deleted. So next we will have to unmount the disk because it's possible, in particular these disks usually come by default pre-formatted with some kind of Windows file system that may get mounted to your Mac automatically. So to do so we have to run disutil as root. So sudo disutil and then unmount disk and then the name of the disk. And now you are probably going to get prompted for the password, unless here in my case where I just ran this command before. That's why I'm not getting prompted again here. And then we copy the image file to the disk. So sudo again, we have to use as root. Now we use the disk dump dd command. We copy it from this image file that we just unzipped. And our output file now is def r disk 8. Using r disk 8 instead of disk 8 makes this substantially faster. And then you also want to define a block size of 1 megabyte. So maybe run this, again, this will take a little time to finish. But after we're done, the image got copied over to this micro SD card. So it can easily take a couple minutes to finish. I skipped forward here. You see it finished in 150 seconds here on my system. The next thing you want to do is make one small modification. On the Mac, it should automatically have mounted a boot partition. So we are going here to /volumes/boot. And this is essentially the Unix boot partition here from the Raspbian operating system. And then we want to create one little file, touch SSH. What this will do is this will turn on the SSH server. This will allow us to connect to the Raspberry Pi without needing a keyboard or a monitor. However, be aware that anybody can connect to the Raspberry Pi. There is an easy to guess username and password, as you'll see in a minute. So you should only do that on your internal network. And then as soon as you connect the Raspberry Pi to the network, you should connect to it and change the password. So once we are done here, we just go back to our home directory and we can now just eject the micro SD card. So just to verify again the disk number, disk 8. So sudo disutil eject def disk 8. And yep, it may prompt you for your password again here. Okay, and now the micro SD card is set, so just insert it into your Raspberry Pi, and with that, you're ready to go. So connect the Raspberry Pi to your network and to power. Now everybody's home network is different, so I just want to give you a couple of generic tips in how to connect your Raspberry Pi to your home network. At first, remember that this Raspberry Pi, the way we have it configured now, is exposed with username and password and an SSH server that's easily guessable. So we don't want to expose it to the internet right away. Easiest thing usually is connected to your home router, just like you connect any other of your devices. So that way you will hopefully enjoy the firewall protection that you have enabled in this home router. You also want to go into the administrative interface of the home router to check the IP address for the Raspberry Pi. It should have been assigned automatically an IP address by the router. That, of course, again, differs based on the router model and how you have it configured. So check the administrative interface for that IP address. So now we connected our Raspberry Pi to the network. In my case, the IP address was 10.5.192. So let's connect to it via SSH. On a Windows system, you would probably download PuTTY as your SSH client, then SSH pi at 10.5.192. The first time you have to accept the fingerprint for the SSH server. If you had this particular Raspberry Pi connect to your network before, had another operating system on it, then you will get a warning that the key changed. The default password is Raspberry. So now we are logged in. Of course, the first thing we want to do is we want to change the password, and it will actually warn you and tell you how to do it. So let's just change the password here. First, again, the old password Raspberry. And then my new password. Okay, so we got the first step here. Next, you really just need to follow sort of the instructions from the GitHub page. So let me just pull up the GitHub page here. So you will see this. You know, on the GitHub page, there are these instructions. Here it tells you a little bit about how to set up SSH and a couple other things like this. We already have done that. The next thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you actually use the entire SD card. So let's just copy this command and return to our Raspberry. Let's paste this in. Okay. So we got this part done, and then back to our browser again. We don't necessarily have to reboot right away. We can first here run the upgrade, because we also need to upgrade to reboot after the upgrade. So first update the libraries here. First we update all of our repositories. This should take not too long. Of course, how long this takes depends again on your internet speed. And then the upgrade. Okay, this can take a little while, depends on how old the version of Raspbian is that you downloaded. So I will skip here to the end and not record the entire upgrade process. After this is finished, all you have to do is reboot the system just by typing in sudo and reboot. I'll continue after the reboot. It usually doesn't take very long for a Raspberry Pi to come back after a reboot, so let's just see if we got it back yet, and yep, here it is. So let me log in using my new password, and now we can get started here with our install. There's one package that we need to install that's not installed by default, and that's Git. So just sudo apt install git. And again, you will find these commands on our GitHub page, so you can just copy paste them from there as well. Okay, now we create a directory to install the Honeypot software into. We change to that directory. And then we download the latest version of the Honeypot from GitHub. So then after this is done, we just have to run the install script. The install script has to be run as root, so we again use sudo and then DShield bin install.sh. And this will now walk us through the remainder of the install. Yes, it will do another update again. Just make sure that everything is up to date on your Raspberry Pi. It'll also install additional software required, which can take a while, and I'll speed up part of this as it's just sitting here waiting for things to download. Okay, the first dialog box that comes up just tells us that yes, we are going to turn this particular Raspberry Pi into a Honeypot. So just acknowledge this. Updates, I recommend you're selecting automatic here, but really up to you. If you select manual, just at least once a month check in, make sure everything is working correctly, everything is up to date, because we tend to add new features from time to time to the Honeypot. Then you'll see a few more installs here. The one tool that we're using here is Cowrie. Cowrie simulates an SSH and Telnet server in Python. So that's really sort of one of the core components here of our Honeypot. Next, we have to enter the email address and the API key from the DShield or the Internet Storm Center website. If you don't have one yet, just create an account for yourself, and a key should be created. Just go to the My Accounts page on the Internet Storm Center to retrieve that key. I'm using here a demo key, so yes, I'll change it after recording this video, so please don't use this key, it will not work. And it's always best to copy those keys. So I'm just pasting it in here. And it's either a hex string or a base64 encoded string that we're using here. Yep, it's valid, so it will verify that the key works. And now it will sort of verify a number of configuration parameters for you. For the most part, you can just accept them. These here are IP addresses that are exempt from the Honeypot. It should be your local network. Also, the IP address you're using to connect to the Honeypot, because that's used for administrative purposes. Also, the SSH server will no longer listen on port 22 after you're done. It will change it to this high port. And again, you can change this here if you prefer a different port. It just verifies these parameters. Same for your firewall logs. For the firewall logs that you are submitting, you should ignore your local IP addresses because it can always happen that someone inside your network is connecting by mistake to the Honeypot, and you don't want to report this to us. So it again by default uses your local network. And then which ports are being used by the Honeypot. So we have currently 3 different pieces of software in use. First of all, well, 2 are really one piece, Cowrie. Cowrie uses port 2222 for SSH and 2223 for Telnet. And then we have a simple script that emulates a web server listening on port 8000. So you shouldn't really have to make any changes to this unless you really want to add your own Honeypot software, so to ours. Then of course you can add this. Okay, so this is pretty much it. Now there is a log that's being generated here. If you run into any problems, it's helpful if you send us a copy of the log, but go through the log first, make sure there's nothing in there that you don't want us to know about. It shouldn't log any passwords and so, but it is quite verbose. And you can also just check it yourself and see how things are going and whether everything worked fine. Now, there's also a script to test the status of your Honeypot. So if you change here to DShield bin, there's this status.sh script. Again, you have to run it as root. And it will verify the configuration of your Honeypot. Again, your keys that they're working correctly. When was the last time that we received logs from you? This DShield log file, that's the actual firewall logs. Since I just installed it, you won't see anything here yet. I have to reboot it first. Also, of course, I haven't really submitted anything yet. Run it sort of an hour or 2 hours after you install the Honeypot and rebooted it. Then you should see some new logs here. Also, if there are any updates and such, this will show up here. I'm actually running a beta version essentially here, version 63, which is ahead of the current version. If you would like to update the Honeypot, there is a little update script here that you can run. It will update it for you. Also, if you want to rerun the install script, just run install sh again. If you are running install sh with the update option, then it will not prompt you for any parameters, but just use the existing parameters. Also, if you are using the fast option, that will do an install, but not do any of the updates of the Raspberry Pi software. So this will be substantially faster. This is if you messed up something and you just want to rerun the installer quickly to fix it. That's when you do that. So if you already ran it earlier today, it's unlikely that there are any critical updates. Then the fast option will save you quite a bit of time. And that's really it. So the only thing left to do now is to reboot, and then in a while, well, we'll check in with the website to see if our reports are being received. Okay, I just want to show you quickly what you'll be seeing once you are submitting reports. So let me go here to my account, my reports. If you're clicking on this, you'll sort of get a little summary here. So here are the firewall reports, the SH reports, all of this should be reasonably current. This here is for any web logs that you are submitting. Then you see how many lines total you're submitting. Then you get sort of a little overview here of your reports. Can be slow at times. We're working on improving the speed here. Of course, I also have a ton of reports here that I'm submitting. But now you can sort of just basically click through it and, for example, learn more about this particular source that apparently was attacking me here. So here see more about it, how many targets were totally attacked by this particular source, how many reports we have about this source. So all of these details you can easily see here. You can also just search for an IP address. That'll also just tell you more about a particular IP address. So this is one thing. Now, earlier I mentioned the API key. If you just click here on My Accounts, you will see the API key on the top here. So this is the key that I copied earlier. Well, I hope that you will be installing a Honeypot for us. It's a great project. We really learn a lot from these honeypots. And if you look at all the data we have to offer, like here again, sort of our SH scanning activity, that's always kind of a popular feature of the site. We also have a suspicious domain list here that you can download in order to use it as a block list and such. So let me know if you need any help. We do have a Slack channel, so please use that if you need any help. Send me an email. I like emails, sometimes I respond to it. You can also just use here our contact form. The contact form will send an email to all of our volunteer handlers. So one of them will hopefully respond and help you out, or just let me know to check in on something. So please participate, get your friends to participate. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, you get something back too. You get all of this insight in your reports, and it really makes us a better community. The more data, the more diverse data we have from users. That's it. And again, if you have any questions on the final slide, I'll have my email address as well as a link to the Slack channel.